Good morning and welcome to the Ad Hoc Scrutiny Panel Residential Housing Stock Health and Safety Compliance meeting. The membership of the panel, we've received no apologies for the meeting. The minutes of the previous meeting, does everybody agree the minutes of the previous meeting or have any comments on the minutes of the previous meeting?
Can I just raise one comment, Chair?
Yeah.
I agree the minutes, but we may come back to this later, but Councillor Lee Richards and I were at a meeting of the Tenant Advisory and Grants panel last week. And one of the things they specifically asked was whether they would see how the views that they shared with us at our last meeting were captured and carried forward into our thinking, really. So we said that we would share a copy of these minutes with them because these are public minutes anyway.
Yeah.
So if we could perhaps arrange to send them to those who did come to that meeting, I think actually they'd be quite pleased to see how thoroughly their views have been recorded in these minutes.
Yeah.
They also asked about how their views might ultimately shape and influence what we say in our report, but we can come back to that later.
Okay, all right. Thank you for attending. How did you find the meeting?
It was really useful, useful. And you could see some really good relationships there, I think. So, yeah, very positive.
Good. So, yes, we'll share the minutes with them. And when we come to the report stage, then we can feedback as well. Yeah. Okay. Right. Anybody got any interests they wish to declare? No? Okay, thank you very much. The item that we've got, fire and asbestos policy review, is in public. It's been webcast this morning. With deputations and petitions, we've received no deputations and petitions, and we've received no public questions. So we move straight on to item 7, which is the fire and asbestos policy review. And we've got 2 policies to look at. Can I remind committee members, if they wish to ask questions, if you could raise your hands. And Naz, I think, are you starting this item off? Naz, thank you.
Yeah, so Chair, thank you for that. And you've asked for Ad Hoc Scrutiny Panel to review 2 policies at a time for the next 3 meetings so that we can get through the big 6 compliance policies. And you've really, since we've moved into the council, one of the recommendations was to standardise the policies to ensure that we were consistent with the overall council policy, as well as the kind of the terminology used within the. So it's rather than it being a fundamental change in policy from the ones that K&H had, it's much more of an alignment exercise. So we've carried out those reviews. We've been to the Building Safety Assurance Board, so we've kind of reflected the changes in the paper, which is principally rebranding to ensure that homes and neighbourhoods policies are, homes and neighbourhoods is seen as part of the council and not some separate entity. We've adopted a format that was approved by Building Safety Assurance Board that's in line with the council's compliance policies. And we've updated the legal and regulatory requirements given the change in the policy environment. When it comes to putting together the procedure note or the process maps on how the policy will be implemented and communicated to staff, that's where we will communicate and clarify roles and responsibilities within each bit of the services handling of fire safety and asbestos management. So, and pretty much both of the policies have seen those sorts of changes made to them. The fire safety management policy was approved by the Building Safety Assurance Board in December, and you'll see that attached to Appendix 1. And the policy sets out how we'll manage fire safety in compliance with legislation across the stock in the council. And that stock includes 22.5 domestic properties. So that number looks slightly different to the stock in management because it also includes property that we manage on behalf of others. Really, I don't intend to go through the whole thing through, but the statement does set out things like resources for fire safety, and that we will have adequate resource to deliver our obligations, and that we will continue to implement and maintain a programme of fire risk assessments, provide a fire management plan, ensure all staff contractors are trained in fire safety. And I've just come in on the back of your final bits of your conversation, which and appropriately qualified staff, including contractors. And then we provide a kind of an overall framework for how we manage safety in multi-occupancy residences, including evacuation and communication strategies. And that we conduct regular fire drills, and tenants and partners are aware of how our arrangements will be implemented should there be an incident.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Naz. Now, I know we've got lots of questions on this, but can I just start off by saying that I'm confused? I don't mind admitting that I'm confused on your fire safety policy. Okay, so your fire safety policy, your policy scope at 2.1 says about employees and apprentices, agency workers, etc. And then at 3.2, your policy aim is to ensure you meet obligations as a landlord and for employees, contractors, tenants, leaseholders, and members of the general public. Okay, so those two, so I'm not quite sure, is your policy just for employees, or is your policy for employees, apprenticeships, and keeping tenants safe? Because when we get to the list of things at 3.3, then I think that the answer to this will reflect the questions for 3.3. Can you just clarify?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well,
so
yeah, because you say your policy is aimed at employees at 2.1. And then at 3.2, your policy aims to ensure you meet your obligations as a landlord, which is what I would have expected. Yeah. So I would have expected the policy to have covered anybody working in any properties, etc. So all employees, etc. And also I would have expected the obligations as a landlord, so tenants, etc. But then when you get to 3.3, it's a bit not clear. So can you just clarify for me, is the policy aimed at employees, or is it aimed at everybody connected with any of our properties?
it's to do with employees and those who carry out fire safety works.
Right.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So it's not okay. All right. Okay. So it's employees, and right. Yeah.
And contractors. Anybody who does work on our buildings that relate to fire safety, it applies to them.
Right. Okay. So it's not a policy for how work that includes work with tenants then. So for instance, a clear set of fire safety procedures are in place to enable employees. There's nothing, a clear set of fire safety procedures is available for tenants.
But the communication bit deals with that. So we will be communicating, and we do regularly communicate with tenants.
Okay. Yeah.
Obviously, the whole policy is about keeping tenants safe, and we need to work with tenants. And the policy does set out that we do need to communicate and have a strategy in place to communicate with tenants.
Right. Okay. This is where I was getting confused. So it's an employee-based policy.
Yeah. Those of us who carry out fire safety work.
That's okay. All right.
That's this policy, and then we will communicate with tenants about, as we have done through the Keep Yourself Safe newsletter, around things that they can do to keep themselves safe.
Okay. All right. I'll open it up for questions then. Councillor Smith.
You're on mute, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Naz. Thank you, Chair. Right. Okay. So my understanding from what falls out of that is that the scope of the policy is aimed at contracts and people who are going to do work, but it seeks to assure a whole range of other people, including tenants and etc. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Thank you. Can I just draw your attention to page 15, roles and responsibilities, item 4.5 on the fire safety report. And I think there's just a bit of a copy and paste issue because it says the management of asbestos safety. I believe that should be fire safety.
It should be. Thank you. Well spotted.
Okie dokie. But that's me for the time being. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Oh, I think Linda has left instead of pressed a button to ask a question. Never mind. Sheila, can you perhaps help with that? Kevin?
I think Linda's waiting in the lobby now. Thanks, Councillor. We were discussing beforehand. I think, like for me, the main legislation's obviously covered with this. I think that as a committee, we were looking for how can we have assurance that this is being implemented, and I think some of the detail that we're perhaps looking for is perhaps in the procedure where you set out. When you set out all the performance measures that you've, I'm anticipating they'll be set out in the procedure that say if we're monitoring this policy to ensure it's successfully implemented, this is the key range of performance indicators, and I think that just as you adjourned, we said that the procedure as well presumably contains a specific detail on the quality of work and the qualifications of people across the organisation that have certain roles. I think so. Perhaps some of the detail that we're looking for to be assured that the policy is being implemented and delivered is going to be sitting in the procedure. Is that fair to say, Nas?
Well, we do report on performance to ad hoc scrutiny panel on a monthly basis, and in terms of a statement of compliance, that's where I saw that in the performance demonstrates that the council is either complying or not complying, or the extent of compliance it has with those actions. So you'll see in the dashboards that are meant for the next meeting where the level of compliance, but obviously that dashboard does not take you through things like that. The conversation I came in on, which is it doesn't go through the professional qualifications to the extent that I think you might want to see to say, and in delivering this policy, we have technically and professionally qualified staff that have got the relevant qualifications. That the procedure would say, to be able to carry out this sort of work, you need to be ex-qualified, and we then need to have a records in place in terms of those qualifications, which we're currently doing, to assure ourselves and others that we've got the right people doing the necessary work. So if it's something to do with M&E, we need to ensure that they've got the right qualifications and are suitably expert in delivering those works for us.
So that detail that we've talked about the qualification, that is set out. Is that set out in the procedure then?
To be fair, we haven't written the full procedure because we need to ensure that we understand the role clarity and that we communicate that role clarity to our staff. So we're just working through that procedure note as we speak. I wouldn't normally have professional qualifications in a procedure note though.
No, I was thinking more along the lines. I would expect it to set out. We will undertake fire risk assessments. Yourself, and it's been in the press, the varying standard of quality of fire risk assessments that can be delivered. So you may well specify within that the output of that is a BAFE accredited fire risk assessment, or at least so we know there's some sort of measure of quality on your fire risk assessment. Similarly, underneath that, the servicing and maintenance of fire alarms. I've no doubt you'll quote you might have a a professional accreditation on on that, or it might just reference the British standard that work's done to. But it just that's qualifications is one element, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think as well as that, you'll have a more detailed suite of KPIs rather than just high level. How many fire risk assessments have we done? How many are in date? It will also set out fire alarm servicing, testing, inspection, emergency lighting. There will be a suite of KPIs in relation to this fire safety policy. A detailed suite of KPIs. So I think it's perhaps that level of detail. So the policy's being written. Is there a timescale for that being finalised at present?
The procedure, do you mean, Kevin?
Yeah.
Eric, can you answer that question, please?
I'm afraid I can't, absolutely, from the point of view that when it's due. I believe they're coming in the next month or two to the Building Safety Assurance Board, so they're on the flight path for that, but I haven't actually seen the current drafts.
Okay, so Kevin, did you want to come back on that?
For me, if our role is partly scrutinising the oversight and delivery of this, this document as it is it's a good policy, but in terms of having that line of sight through to is this a living document that's been delivered? I don't think we can do it as it stands on the policy without the underlying detail. So I welcome the visibility on this, but I do think we need to have that complete picture to see the procedures and have that understanding of how they're being implemented.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Linda.
Thank you, Chair. This may be on the same sort of theme, really, but I was trying to understand where in the sort of document hierarchy from this high level policy through to more operational procedures, something like, for example, the frequency of fire safety inspections would be documented. Because, for example, in the policy, there's just the statement that fire safety inspections of premises are conducted, and that's fine, but presumably there is underpinning that something that says, and this is the cycle on which we conduct them, or is there not? I think it might be the same sort of theme as Kevin's question, really. Is there something that underpins this, that talks about the frequency, the qualifications, the other stuff that reflects more the detail of how it will be implemented?
Yeah, that is the procedure guide, yes.
Right, okay, thank you. Can I raise another question then? Having got clear that this is about employees, apprentices, contractors, rather than the tenant side of things, at 2.1, where you say who it's aimed at, contractors are mentioned. They're mentioned in the list at 3.3 as it being a responsibility to ensure that contractors are committed to achieving high standards, or the appropriate standards, but they're not mentioned as being within the scope of the policy. So I did just wonder if they should be, maybe.
So in terms of ensuring contractors carry out works in accordance with our policy, when we would procure a contractor, it's incumbent on our people, our staff, to ensure that that contractor is fully aware of our policies and in terms of the tender returns, demonstrates compliance, and then we hold them to that through the contract monitoring. So it's almost an indirect link into the contractors through our staff.
Yeah, could I ask, do you not think that that should be mentioned in the policy?
It should be, Councillor Snage. The distinction, do you mean?
Yeah.
We can do, yeah.
You know that, Eric, did you want to come in?
Yeah, yes, Chair. It's an easy addition to add, obviously, from the point of view of that opening sentence under the scope. But I do believe it should be read and understood by all parties who have responsibility and the duty of care, etc. That's where that is trying to capture all and every other party that might be involved. So you can add contractors, you could add subcontractors, you could add X, Y, and Z, you could add, you know, Uncle and Auntie Tom Cobley, I suppose, ultimately. But that is the catch-all phrase that is trying to cover that broad scope of anybody that's involved in the delivery of these services.
Yeah. Okay. And perhaps it's not clear. I think that's what we're.
I think that's the point that's being made, and it's
Yeah,
say it's an easy addition to put in subcontractors as a specific mention within that list.
Yeah. Yeah. So, can I also ask 3.3? You've got each maintenance, upgrade, and renewal scheme is assessed to ensure fire safety standards are not compromised and remain compliant after works are carried out. Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Should there be something about record keeping in the policy? Because you've got the work that's being done.
Yeah, I'm trying
but then, you know, how do you know?
I would normally put that in the procedure note in terms
Right.
of,
Okay.
because it's a part of the process that
Right.
staff need to observe to ensure that validation happens at the back end of completion
All
of
right.
works.
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as it is somewhere, that's what I'm.
Oh yeah,
saying.
sorry.
Yeah.
Oh yes, validation and record keeping are
Yeah.
in that
Needs
thinking.
to be there, doesn't it?
Yes.
And when you're talking about fire safety inspections, yeah, with regard to fire prevention, containment, detection, alarms, means of escape, etc. Do I take it in that list there that there is things like there are other things as well, such as compartmentation and things like that. If there'd been works in a building to ensure there's no those works have not in any way downgraded the fire. Do you know what I mean? That there's not been a I'm not quite.
Compartmentation breaches, I think, is
Yeah,
the
I'm not quite sure
point
what the
you're referring
word
to.
is, but do you know what I mean? That any works have kept the standard of fire safety that you're expecting in your properties, and by everybody, and so that compartmentation is maintained and things like this. Yeah.
Yes, because on all work that we do, we will assign a project manager and a clerk of works.
Yeah.
And the clerk of works is responsible for ensuring quality assurance. So simple things like, now that we need a golden thread on fire door implementation, we have to keep photographic records along the way. All of those records need to be validated and signed off before we can say we are now compliant. So any works that then subsequently get carried out, we will have that same quality assurance in place to assure us that the work that we've previously done to fix the compartmentation breaches have not been compromised again.
Right. Okay. All right. So that would be in there. I'm just trying to find where it all links together. You know what I mean? From your policy to your procedure to your and everything.
Delivery.
Just
Yeah.
yeah. Linda, you wanted to come in.
Yes, thank you, Joe. It was another just difference but smaller point, I think, really. What you've been able to share with us so far around progress on works is showing that the most difficult ones to deal with are those where you're in legal process effectively because you're not having access, and it's not a matter of not being willing and able to do the work, you just can't get in. And the roles and responsibilities under this policy stop at 4.6, where it's the housing teams providing support where gaining access is difficult. And I wondered whether there should just be another bullet point that says, and the legal team has a responsibility then to take proceedings expeditiously as necessary to deal with that sort of rump of cases that otherwise you simply can't get access.
That's a helpful suggestion, Linda. Yes, we can certainly add that in.
Okay, thanks. Can I ask about your roles and responsibilities then? So, can you just explain to me, please, about 4.3 and 4.4? So, the policy will go to the Building Safety Board to receive regular updates on its implementation. And the Housing Advisory Board will receive quarterly performance reports and ensure compliance is being achieved. So how is that split going to work? How is your Building Assurance Board going to ensure that the policy is operated in practice, and how is it envisaged your Housing Advisory Board is ensuring that compliance is being achieved? How are they going to sit together?
So, Chair, sorry if I'm being a bit thick today.
No, it's probably me that's not being clear. Go on.
Is it are you asking about the relationship between Building Safety Assurance Board and the Housing Advisory Board?
Yes, because if your buildings, and I can see why they're going to both. I'm not questioning that they're going to both. Okay, but what I'm questioning is, are they both doing the same? More, how are their contributions going to be? Are they going to be slightly different? So, if your Building Safety Assurance Board is ensuring that the policy is operated in practice, then you're going to need surely performance and updates and things like that to there. If your Housing Advisory Board is going to receive performance reports, then surely you need to ensure it's being compliant, then they need some knowledge of the policy and procedures and things. So it's just how that circle's going to be completed so that one isn't missing information that the other thinks it's getting and the other's not missing information that the other thinks it's getting. Have I confused the issue still further?
No, I guess the reading, there needs to be a bit more clarity because the Housing Advisory Board do need to have oversight on the policy. Absolutely. And which then the performance reporting will give them assurance about compliance with that policy. I don't intend to take procedure notes to the board because that's operational. But that in terms of ensuring that the strategic intent is there, that the board must have oversight on that to help cabinet discharges function.
Yeah, so there's just seemed to be a bit more clarity around the roles there, maybe.
Yeah.
Linda?
Sorry, yeah. But on that point, paragraph 4.2 says it's the Building Safety Assurance Board that has the overall governance responsibility.
I need to correct that. It's an officer group. It's an officer group.
Right.
So in my own mind, that's not governance oversight. It's an officer group.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Does anybody have any other questions on the fire safety policy before we move to the asbestos policy? No? Okay, so the asbestos policy. Anybody got any points on the asbestos policy then? We talked about performance and KPIs. The same would apply to this. I'm presuming the roles as well and responsibility at 4.4 and 4.5 would be the same sort of questions there. Anybody else got anything? I've got something at 3.3 to provide information and awareness to tenants and other relevant persons where required. Now, yeah.
Okay. Elected members, are you referring to there?
Well, it's a little bit of a generic statement, is that where required, provide information and awareness to tenants and others where required. And it's the where required that I got circled. So I'm presuming as well that this one is the same as the fire safety. So you seem to in one you're pointing, the policy is pointing towards information for tenants, and in the other it's not so much. So, but for instance, if a tenant is in a property where, I don't know, there's something in there that maybe of concern or maybe not, do you know what I mean? How, unless it's disturbed, how are you going to ensure that you provide information and awareness where required?
So the where required element is we go in and out of people's homes all the time, carrying out repair and maintenance works.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, if we were doing an asbestos survey at a development, we would expect to let tenants know that we are carrying out surveys, whether it's if it's routine, to assure them that it's routine, to ensure that we can continue to keep them safe. If it's part of other works that, say for instance, we're doing fire compartmentation works and we need to do some intrusive work, we would want to do a survey to ensure that we're not going to disturb any asbestos at the same time. And again, we would make tenants aware of that. But when we're going in and doing routine maintenance and work like that, we might have a look up on our database on Asbestos Pro, for instance. At that point, we wouldn't really be saying anything if AIB is, safe and in management, and it's and we've got the appropriate mitigations in place. It's only where it was disturbed that we would then want to inform the tenant. So those are the bits about as required. I mean, it's not a we will only tell you if we have to. It's there are appropriate circumstances in which we need to do those sorts of things.
Yes. So you're talking about if you disturb, or if the council have works that disturb anything. Yes.
Sorry, if we were going to do some work, and we know that we're going to do some intrusive work, then we would want to ensure that we were very clear about whether there was any asbestos. So if we were going up into roof voids, for instance, is there some asbestos debris up there that we need to be mindful of, etc. Where a tenant reports suspected disturbance of asbestos, of course, we will respond in an urgent manner.
Right. Okay. That's where I'm going. Linda.
Yeah, just a couple of points, if I may. There isn't in this one, in the list at 3.3, the same statement as there was in the fire safety one about ensuring that contractors and suppliers are committed to meeting the necessary standards. And it struck me that that would be a read across that was applicable to both policies equally, really. And then in the reverse direction, the first bullet point at 3.3 on the asbestos policy struck me as quite a useful, just overarching one, saying we'll comply with all our statutory responsibilities. But you don't have the equivalent in the fire safety policy. So I just wondered if there was a bit of sharing between the two policies that could usefully be done on that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. We'll make that change. And make that kind of alignment and synergy between the two.
I think so. Yeah. And also as well, you say in your fire safety, your first bullet point says adequate resources are available to maintain standards. I mean, I did wonder what somebody's definition of adequate, but I understand where you're coming from with that. Adequate resources are available to maintain standards in fire safety. You haven't got a similar thing in the asbestos. So I am presuming that you're saying that adequate resources will be available for both.
Yes, I shall go back and make sure that there's consistency across all our policies, not just the two.
Yeah, I think it's important that people know that it will be resourced to put things correct. Okay. Does anybody else have any other points they wish to raise on the two policies that we've had? All right.
That was a helpful conversation. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Right. That ends the formal meeting. The ad hoc scrutiny panel will now move into an informal session. So thank you everybody for attending the formal meeting this morning. Thank you.